On the glowing planet Zephyra, where buildings floated and diamonds grew on trees, there lived a rich alien princess named Alira. She had everything: golden dresses, flying cars, robot servants, and the power to command anyone, but inside her heart, she felt lonely, empty, and unsure. Everyone around her smiled, bowed, and praised her. But Alira always wondered, do they love me or do they love my crown? Alira was young, curious, and different from the other royal aliens. She didn't care much for riches or praise. She cared about truth, kindness, and the meaning of life. One night, while standing on her balcony under the 3 silver moons, she made a decision. "I will leave this palace," she whispered. "I want to know who is truly kind in this galaxy." She opened her secret vault, the one no one knew about. Inside it was a small ship, invisible to the eyes of others. She wore a disguise, a dirty cloak, torn gloves, and brown dust all over her glowing blue skin. She looked nothing like a princess, just like a poor wanderer. She left a note for the palace guards. "Do not search for me. I'll return when I find truth." Alira entered the ship and set the course for a small blue planet called Earth. She had read about humans. Some were kind, some cruel, some brave, some greedy. But one thing was clear: they were emotional, unpredictable, and real. She wanted to see them with her own eyes. Without bodyguards, without gold, without her royal name. The ship landed silently in a dark alley of a human city. The air was cold, the streets were wet, and loud machines flew above. Alira stepped out and looked around. She felt fear, excitement, and something new: freedom. As she walked through the city, people passed her quickly. They looked at her dirty clothes and turned their eyes away. No one said hello. No one asked if she was okay. Some people even laughed at her, thinking she was just a crazy street girl. Alira felt pain in her chest, something she had never felt before. This is how the poor live, she thought. Invisible to the world, she sat near a trash bin, wrapping her arms around herself to stay warm. Night came and the city lights turned bright, but no light reached her corner. She hadn't eaten in hours, and her alien stomach rumbled strangely. Still no one came near except for one human. He looked young, maybe in his late 20s, with messy hair and tired eyes. He wore old clothes with oil stains, and he carried a small bag of tools. He stopped when he saw her, his eyes filled with concern, not judgment. "Hey," he said softly, "are you okay?" Alira looked up, surprised. This was the first time anyone had spoken to her since she landed. I'm cold," she whispered, keeping her alien accent hidden. The man looked at her for a moment and then took off his jacket. "Here, take this," he said. "It's not much, but it's warm." She hesitated but accepted it. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. He smiled a little. "You looked like you needed it." That simple answer made Alira's heart ache. She had everything in the world, yet no one had ever done something so kind without a reason. "My name's Jace," he said. "I fix old machines. Live not far from here." He pointed toward a small garage across the street. "I don't have much, but if you need a place to stay tonight, you can come with me." Alira stared at him, unsure if she should trust him, but something in his voice felt honest. Warm and safe. She stood slowly and followed him. As they crossed the road, she looked back at the dark alley. She had arrived as a beggar, but now she felt like something important had just begun. Inside the garage, it smelled like metal and oil, but it was cozy. Jace made her a cup of warm liquid, something he called tea. She drank it slowly, and for the first time she smiled. Jace didn't ask her name, her past, or what she was doing there. He just gave her a blanket, pointed to a soft chair, and said, "You can sleep here tonight." "No worries." Alira curled up in the chair, still wearing the dirty cloak, but under it her heart was glowing. Not from power, not from pride, but from something she had never felt before: kindness. And as she drifted into sleep, she whispered, "This human, he's different." Jace had no idea the girl he brought home was an alien princess from another galaxy. To him, she was just a quiet, scared, lonely soul who needed help. The world was hard enough, and he knew what it felt like to have no one. So when he saw her shivering in that cold alley, he didn't think twice. He just followed his heart. The garage was his home. Not fancy, but full of life. Old machines lined the walls. Wires hung from the ceiling, and the floor smelled of metal and dreams. Jace had built everything himself with his own hands, day by day. He gave Alira some old clothes and turned on a small heater near the couch. "You can sleep here as long as you need," he said with a soft smile. Alira sat quietly, her glowing eyes hidden behind her human disguise. She watched him, confused by his kindness. He never asked where she came from, or what happened to her. He just brought her food, space and warmth on her home planet. No one gave anything without expecting something back, but this human, he gave without asking. Jace spent his days repairing broken machines, radios and hoverboards for local people. Most of them didn't pay much, but he worked hard anyway. Alira stayed in the garage watching him. Sometimes helping in small ways, he would laugh and say, "You've got a good hand for tools." She would just smile, hiding the fact that she once controlled machines with her thoughts. Days passed, and Alira began to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the quiet kind that comes with silence, but the real kind that comes from being safe. Every night they talked about stars, machines, music, and dreams. Jace told her how his parents left him when he was young. He grew up fixing things because he didn't know how to fix himself. Alira listened, her heart slowly opening like a flower in the morning sun. She had met thousands of beings in her life, but none like Jace. He was broken in places, but still whole in his soul. And that made her feel alive. One cold night, the wind howled outside like a hungry beast. The heater broke and Jace had only one blanket. Without saying a word, he placed it gently over Alira and sat in the corner with his arms crossed. She opened her mouth to speak, but he stopped her. "You've been through enough," he said. "I'll be fine." That night, she couldn't sleep. Her alien mind couldn't understand how someone with so little could give so much. In Zephyra, even friends measured favors with numbers and gifts. Here, this human was giving away warmth, space, time, and care for nothing in return. The next morning, Alira woke up early, and Jace was already working. Oil covered his hands, and his face looked tired but full of purpose. "You work too hard," she said quietly. He smiled. "Hard work keeps my heart from falling apart." That sentence stayed with her all day. In her palace, she had servants who worked all day, but none with hearts like his. Here was a man who gave even when he had nothing, and she was a princess pretending to be poor, living a lie. Guilt began to grow in her chest. She wanted to tell him the truth, to say, "I am not who you think I am." But what if he looked at her differently? What if this kindness turned into fear or anger? What if he felt betrayed? That evening, she stood by the window and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, her palace waited. Her guards panicked, her father furious, but down here in this dirty garage, she had found something no palace could give, real connection. Suddenly, there was a loud noise outside. 3 men in dark jackets entered the garage, shouting, "Where's the girl? She stole from our food truck." Jace stepped forward, shielding Alira. "She didn't steal anything," he said firmly. "Leave now." The men laughed and shoved Jace. He fell but stood again, fists clenched. Alira's heart raced. Her hands glowed faintly as alien energy surged in her veins. She was trained to fight, but not as a beggar, not here, not now. One of the men grabbed a metal pipe and swung it at Jace. Without thinking, Alira moved like lightning. She caught the pipe midair with one hand, her eyes glowing bright blue. The men froze, staring at her. Jace's eyes widened. Not in fear, but in shock. "What are you?" he whispered. Alira stepped back, her heart pounding. She had revealed too much without answering. She ran out into the night, disappearing into the shadows. Behind her, Jace stood still, broken pipe in his hand. His mind spinning with questions. The girl he took in wasn't just strange, she was something else. Something not from this world. And for the first time, he realized he hadn't rescued her. She might have come to rescue him. Alira ran through the streets like a shadow lost in a storm. Rain poured from the sky, soaking her cloak, but she didn't stop. Her heart beat fast, not because of fear, but because of truth she had shown him. Jace had seen a glimpse of who she truly was, and she couldn't take it back. Behind her, the garage faded into the dark city night. The only place where she had felt safe was now filled with questions and danger. She turned down an alley, pressed her back against a wall, and gasped for breath. Her hands still shimmered faintly with alien energy, and her eyes glowed softly in the dark. She clenched her fists and forced it down. She had broken her cover, and now she didn't know what would happen next. Jace stood in the garage, motionless. His hand still held the broken pipe, but his mind was stuck on one thing: those glowing blue eyes. That wasn't human, not even close, but then he remembered her fear, her silence, the kindness in her voice. She had slept on his couch. Shared his tea, helped him fix machines. Was that all fake? Or was she real, just different? The next morning, Alira was gone. She had returned to her invisible ship, hidden in Earth's orbit. Inside, her ship spoke softly. Welcome back. Princess Alira. But she ignored it. She sat on the cold floor and stared at Earth spinning below. I wasn't ready, she whispered. I got too close. Her heart felt heavier than the stars outside the window. She thought pretending to be a beggar would show her the truth. But instead, she had found something more dangerous. Feelings. Feelings she didn't understand. Feelings that hurt. How could one human make her question everything? Back on Earth, Jace repaired the heater in silence. He kept replaying her voice in his mind. The way she looked at him. The way she had caught that pipe like it was nothing. He knew she wasn't human, but somehow she was more human than anyone he had ever met. People he knew lied, cheated, ignored the poor, but she had nothing. Yet she listened, helped, and cared. He cleaned the couch she used to sleep on and placed the blanket back. Where did you go? He whispered to no one. The garage felt colder without her. Quieter, emptier, wrong. Alira stood at the front window of her ship. Her long royal robe replaced the cloak. Her crown rested beside her untouched. She could go back home, call off the mission, return to her safe, perfect life. But her heart wouldn't let her. The image of Jace's tired face, his jacket over her shoulders. His small smile, it haunted her. He had seen her glow and still didn't run. What if he wasn't afraid? She turned to the ship's control panel and said, Take me closer. The ship obeyed, floating lower in stealth mode. Invisible to all radar, Alira looked down at the city, searching for that small garage with broken machines and a warm heart inside. That night, Jace sat on the garage rooftop, sipping cheap coffee from a dented cup. He stared at the stars, wondering which one she came from. Then something flickered in the sky. A shimmer, a blink, almost like a tear in the air. He stood up quickly, eyes wide. Alira? He whispered, but nothing landed. Nothing moved, just silence inside the ship. Alira watched him from above. She reached toward the screen as if she could touch him. She saw how lonely he looked, how patiently he waited. She wanted to go to him, say everything, tell him who she really was, but fear pulled her back. He will hate me, she told herself. He will think I lied. She pressed her fingers to the glass and whispered, I'm sorry, Jace, I came looking for kindness, and I found you. She turned off the screen. Heartbreaking, she had come close, so close to something real, but now she was farther than ever, close in soul, far in truth. Jace looked up at the stars one last time and sighed. She was real, he said softly. And she's gone. But in the sky, hidden beyond human sight, a girl with blue skin sat in silence. And for the first time in her royal life, she didn't feel powerful, she felt alone. The stars above Earth sparkled like diamonds scattered across black silk. But for Alira, they felt cold, distant, and quiet. She sat in the control room of her invisible ship, watching the human city below. Lights blinked, cars moved, lives continued. But the only person she searched for was Jace. She had traveled across galaxies, hidden her true self, and tasted life as a beggar. Yet she had not been ready for what she found. A human who treated her like an equal. Not a princess, not a beggar, just someone who mattered. But now she had run away, leaving behind only confusion. Inside the ship, the AI spoke again. Princess, do you wish to return to Zephyra? Alira closed her eyes and whispered, No, not yet. The crown in her hands felt heavier than ever. Not because of its jewels, but because it now meant distance. Distance from truth, from simplicity. From him far below in the same small garage. Jace fixed a broken radio in silence. He had stopped asking questions, stopped hoping. He thought maybe it was all a dream. Maybe she wasn't real, but deep inside, something told him she was watching. That night, as a soft rain touched the city, something incredible happened. The ground near the garage vibrated slightly. Wind spun in a perfect circle, and a glowing shape appeared in the sky. A royal alien ship, larger than anything Jace had ever seen, descended slowly, its edges shimmered like water, then became visible. Jace dropped his tools and stumbled outside. His eyes widened and his breath caught in his chest. The ship was beautiful, round, silver, and alive with soft blue light. A door opened and a figure stepped out. Alira no longer wore torn clothes or dust. She stood tall in her royal robe, her skin glowing faint blue under the rain. Her eyes, still full of sadness, met his. She walked slowly toward him, her guard staying behind. No weapons, no armor, just truth. Jace stared at her, speechless. "I didn't lie," she said quietly. "But I didn't tell the full truth either." Jace's voice cracked. "And what are you?" "I'm from Zephyra, a planet far from here," she answered. "I'm the daughter of a royal family, but I left it all to search for something real." Jace took a step back, confused. "You mean, all this time, you were a princess?" "Yes," she said, "but when I met you, I wasn't a princess. I was just a girl trying to find out if kindness still exists." There was a long pause. Heavy with emotion, rain fell between them like soft music. Jace looked at her, not with fear, not with anger, but with something else, hurt. "Why didn't you trust me?" he asked. Alira lowered her head. "Because I didn't trust myself," she said. "I thought you'd change the moment you knew who I was." "I wouldn't have," he whispered. "I already knew you were different, but I didn't care." She stepped closer, her voice shaking. "I came looking for kindness, and I found it in your garage, in your tea, in your broken heater, in your silence. I found it in you." Jace looked into her eyes, deep pools of stars and sorrow, and something inside him softened. She had left her world for a truth he carried in his small human heart. He slowly reached out his hand. "So what now?" he asked. Alira smiled faintly and said, "I want to show you my world just once." Jace hesitated, then nodded. "One time," he said. "But if I don't like it, I'm coming back." Alira laughed, a sound full of both joy and pain. "Deal," she said, taking his hand gently. The guards watched in silence as the human and the alien walked back toward the ship. No war, no weapons, no commands, just two souls walking side by side. The door closed behind them and the ship rose into the night sky. Invisible again, silent as a dream, Jace sat beside her in the control room, eyes wide with wonder outside the window. Stars danced closer than ever. But inside the ship, something more powerful had awakened. A connection stronger than distance. A bond built not on gold or power, but on truth and trust. And as Earth faded behind them, Alira whispered, "Now it's your turn to see how my world hides its secrets." Zephyra was nothing like Earth. Its skies shimmered in 5 colors at once, and its oceans floated above mountains like giant glowing rivers. Buildings twisted like spirals of crystal, and creatures flew through the air with wings made of light, but to Jace it all felt wrong. As the ship landed near the royal city, Jace stepped out, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. It was beautiful, no doubt, but it didn't feel real. Everything was too clean, too quiet, too perfect. There was no rust, no dirt, no warmth, only silence behind polished smiles. Alira walked beside him, dressed once again in her royal robes. Servants bowed, guards saluted, and the road cleared wherever she stepped. Jace followed, but his hands stayed in his pockets. His heart unsure, he remembered his small garage, the smell of oil, the clink of tools, and the sound of real laughter. Here, there were only fake compliments and cold beauty. Inside the palace, walls glowed with energy, and music played without instruments. Alira led him through long hallways and floating elevators until they reached her private chamber. She turned to him and said, "This is where I live." Jace looked around and nodded slowly. "It's nice," he said, "but it doesn't feel like you." Alira paused, her smile fading. "I used to think this was the dream," she said softly. "But after living in your world, I realized how lonely it really is." She offered him a guest room filled with floating cushions and clothes made of light thread. But Jace chose the floor near the window. "I'm not made for all this," he said. "I need something I can touch, fix, build." Later that night, they attended a royal gathering. Hundreds of aliens in golden robes. Their voices, soft and fake, surrounded Alira. They praised her return, ignored Jace, and whispered behind shimmering fans. Why is she walking with a primitive human? He's not even genetically enhanced. What can he offer her besides dirt? Jace heard it all, every word like a cold slap to the soul. He stood still, trying to breathe. Trying not to break, he looked at Alira across the hall, her face stiff, her eyes scanning the crowd. He didn't belong here, and they all knew it. Suddenly, one noble, tall and sharp-tongued, stepped forward and said aloud, "Your Highness, has your time with lesser species made you forget your place?" The room went silent. Jace lowered his head, ready to walk away. But then he heard her voice. "Enough," Alira said, loud and clear. She walked to Jace and stood beside him. her voice shaking with power. He may be human, but he showed me more kindness than anyone in this room. He gave me food, warmth, protection, and friendship with nothing in return. While all of you only bow to my title, he treated me like a person, the noble sneered. He's still beneath you. Alira stepped forward, eyes glowing. Then maybe I'd rather stand beneath the stars with him than above the clouds with cowards. The hall gasped. But Jace didn't smile. He turned and walked out, leaving Alira alone in the center of the room. She didn't stop him, not yet, because she knew. This wasn't the moment to chase, this was the moment to choose that night. Jace sat alone near the edge of the floating city. Beneath him, clouds passed like rivers above him. Zephyra's moon shone bright, but none of it mattered. He missed Earth, his tools, his coffee, his silence, and most of all, he missed the version of Alira who had once slept on his couch. Footsteps approached quietly. Alira sat beside him, her robe gone, replaced with the same old cloak she wore the first time they met. No crown, no guards, just her. I thought I could bring you into my world, she whispered. But maybe I forgot how cold it really is. Jace looked at her, tired and gentle. You didn't forget, he said. You just wanted it to be better than it is. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I want to be where the truth is, she said. He didn't say anything, but the silence was warm, the kind of silence that felt like home. Come back with me, Jace said. Back to Earth. Alira lifted her head and smiled. If I go, I may never be allowed to return. Jace looked into her glowing eyes and said, Then don't return to a place that never truly saw you. Alira closed her eyes, her mind racing with memories. Palace lights, false smiles, lonely dinners, and one small garage with a broken heater and a human heart. She opened her eyes and whispered, I know what I must do. The stars above Zephyrah had never looked so quiet. They twinkled like distant eyes, watching silently as Alira stood at the edge of her world. The wind lifted her cloak, the same one she wore when she first met Jace. Now she stood not as a princess, not as a beggar, but as something in between. A soul caught between two planets, two lives, and one impossible choice. Jace sat beside her on the stone balcony, legs dangling over nothing. Below them, the clouds flowed like rivers of silver mist, but his eyes were not on the sky. They were on her. He had seen spaceships, palaces, and floating towers, but none of it impressed him like the girl who once warmed her hands near his broken heater. Alira, he said quietly, do you know what you want? Her fingers tightened around the edge of the railing. For the first time in my life, she whispered. I think I do, but it scares me. She turned to face him, her eyes glowing softly in the dim moonlight. In your world I was free, she said. No rules, no titles, no expectations, but here, every step I take writes history, every word I say shakes the system. Jace nodded slowly. You don't have to explain it to me, he said. But you do have to ask yourself something. She looked at him, waiting, and then he said the words that would echo in her mind for the rest of her life. Are you living a life that's yours or the one that was handed to you? Alira's breath caught in her throat. The question hit harder than any royal law, any alien tradition. She had been raised to believe her path was already written, but meeting Jace had shown her that choice was the real power, and now that power was in her hands. Back in the palace, the council waited. Her father, King Varian, paced in his chamber, angry yet worried. Guards whispered rumors. Some said the princess had fallen in love with a human. Others said she had lost her mind, but none of them truly knew her heart. Alira turned to Jace, her voice clear. If I leave with you, I may be cast out forever. Jace's face remained calm. And if you stay, he asked gently, will you ever be free again? The silence between them stretched like a thread ready to snap. Alira looked up at the stars once more. They taught me that power is control, she said. But you taught me that real power is freedom. You gave me warmth when I had nothing, and you asked for nothing when I could give everything. Jace stood up, brushing dust from his jeans. I'm not asking you to run away, he said. I'm just asking you to choose what feels right to you. If it's this world, you stay. If it's ours, you come. She looked at his hand, stretched out toward her again. The same hand that had offered her tea, comfort and kindness, not because she was royal, but because she was simply her. A tear slid down her cheek, glowing faintly blue in the moonlight. She took his hand slowly, her voice shaking but strong. I want to build something real, she said, and I want to build it with you. Just then, the royal alert echoed in the air. A bright beam of light shot from the palace tower. The summoning call. It was the king's final demand to return. Alira looked at it, then turned away. "No crown is worth more than truth," she whispered. And with that, she walked beside Jace, step by step, away from the palace, away from Zephyr's sky, toward something uncertain, but true, toward a world of rust, fire, cold tea, and warm hands. As the ship waited quietly on the hill behind them, Jace opened the door and looked back one last time. "Are you sure?" he asked. Alira smiled softly. "I was never this sure of anything before." She stepped in, and the ship rose toward Earth. Behind them, Zephyra watched silently. But ahead, a new life waited, free of gold, but full of light. The stars above Earth twinkled the same way they always had, but for Alira, everything had changed. She had left behind glowing palaces, silent dinners, and a life scripted by birth. And now she stood beneath a flickering neon sign that read, "Starlight Repairs." The garage hadn't changed much. It still smelled like warm metal, old wires and spilled oil. But now there was something new in the air. Laughter. Jace handed her a small box of screws and said, "We've got a plasma fan unit to fix before noon." Alira smiled, rolled up her sleeves, and replied, "Only if you admit I fixed the last one faster." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Says the girl who fried the fuses," she laughed. A sound more real than any royal speech she ever gave. The townspeople had grown used to her strange eyes and soft blue glow. At first, they stared, whispered, and avoided the shop, but slowly word spread. The girl with glowing hands could fix anything. Faster, better, cleaner. And the man beside her always smiled like nothing else mattered. Together, they became known as the Miracle Mechanics, not because of the tech, but because of the feeling people left with, seen, helped, and respected. It wasn't a kingdom, it wasn't a palace, but it was home. One evening, an old man entered the garage holding a broken music player. Alira gently took it, turned a small dial, and asked, "This is your daughter's favorite song, right?" The man's eyes widened. "How did you—" She just smiled. "Lucky guess." Jace leaned against the wall, watching her, and whispered under his breath, "That's her magic." In the back of the garage, next to the coffee maker and tool shelves, a small garden grew. It wasn't much, just a few plants from Zephyra. Glowing faintly purple in Earth's sun, Alira cared for them every morning, whispering to them in her native language. To her, they were not just plants. They were roots, a reminder that even the rarest things could grow in unexpected soil. At night, they sat on the rooftop, watching the stars just like they had before. Jace held a cup of hot tea, and Alira held his hand. "Do you miss it?" he asked. "The floating cities, the royal halls, the people bowing?" She leaned her head on his shoulder and said, "No one bows here, but people look me in the eyes. No one follows orders, but everyone brings stories, and no one calls me Your Highness." She smiled. "They just call me Alira, and that's enough." One day, a small alien pod landed quietly outside their garage. A messenger from Zephyra stepped out, bowing deeply. "Your father sends his words?" "Princess," he said. "He wishes you well and says—" He was wrong. Alira read the message and folded it with care. She looked at Jace and said, "I think he's changing slowly." Jace smirked. "Takes time to fix broken circuits," she nodded. "And broken hearts too. They didn't go back, not yet, maybe not ever. Because what they had now was something stronger than power. Something better than wealth, choice, love, and a life they built with their own hands. In a world of dirt and light, of fire and rain, of silence and song, an alien girl and a human boy rewrote destiny with kindness. Not with war, not with politics, but with a wrench, a smile, and an open door. And somewhere in the galaxy, someone else might be watching, hoping, wondering if kindness still exists. And if they're lucky, they might find it in a small garage beneath the stars, just like Alira did.